Next, we will move to file item number 2 by Senator Fullers. File item number 2. Giddy up there, Senator. You may begin when you're ready.
First, I'd like to thank the chairman and the consultant and staff. You have been very generous with your time, very, very courteous in your encouragement and comments. Even though at many points we've had some intense discussions. So I want to thank you because I know you don't have time to do that for everyone, and you've spent a lot of time on this bill with us. Having said that, I would like to begin by presenting SB 138 relating to physical education exemption for high school rodeo athletes. SB 138 clarifies that a local school district has the option to exempt high school rodeo athletes from PE classes. This bill idea was brought to me last year by a group of high school rodeo athletes who serve as ambassadors for their sport and are eager to train themselves to be at the top of their potential and to excel in their sport. It is very important to them to be able to engage in regular high school activities. They have some of the highest grades, as well as to work after school very intensively at an Olympic type strenuous level in order to bring themselves to the highest level of their sport in their competition. And I have some of them with me today, and you'll get a chance to talk to them. As a former school superintendent, administrator, and teacher in 7 different districts and for 32 years, one of the things that I found that engaged me most about education was to provide students with special talents, whether it was special needs, special talents, remarkable skill, or determination, the opportunity to excel in their dreams in whatever way I could. I have used independent study. In a moment, as I begin to describe this bill, you'll see that one of the reasons that I am here asking for this today is that I felt independent study was too narrow for some of our best students. We have students who would drop out, students who have to go on independent study and get outside of the system when they want to be a part of the student body and they want to be a part of maybe using a PE class for trigonometry or something else. And it's very difficult for them to do that in the independent study session. So today, though independent study is the current way that these students would be able to participate because they have many outside events after they become a winner in their sport, I feel that that is not best for them, especially since it is generally for one semester. So last year I recognized these outstanding men and women with a bipartisan group of legislators, and their dedication to their sport was impressive. I'm always impressed at students who go to school, get a very high grade point average, do their homework after school, and in many cases do the chores for these students afterwards, and then spend many hours riding their horse, grooming their horse, working with animals, roping, training themselves in all the different skills, and falling into bed in the evenings. And these students told me those kinds of stories, but what they told me that struck me even more was that even though they had competitors who they would, of course, like to be ahead of, they felt bad for those students because they went to schools that did not have programs that allowed them to participate in rodeo through their PE program. The students that are with me today are the students who feel that, for the most part, they have excelled in their sport because their school district included rodeo participation as an PE exemption under current law and allowed them to use that credit to participate to a higher level. For those of you who don't know, the California High School Rodeo Association is highly organized. It requires each school's approval for students to train and compete. It does not allow students to join the association unless they have that agreement in writing from the school district. According to Section 51242 of the Education Code, Local school boards may currently elect to exempt a pupil from PE courses if that pupil is engaged in a school-sponsored interscholastic athletic program. The code defines interscholastic athletic program very vaguely. At one point in our lives, when school was all the same, I think we might have all agreed upon what that is. At this point, I'm not so sure. These students should be considered alongside of other sports if a school district is going to exempt athletes from PE, and if the school board adopts the appropriate controls that are within the education statute now to shape that criteria in that program. When student athletes are exempt from PE based on education and exercise, they receive the exercise they receive from their respective sports. The increased flexibility in the student's schedule allows them to continue to pursue rigorous core classes in addition to a particular area that they want to develop to a higher level than most of us could aspire to. This bill makes a small change to the code that would have a big impact for these students. This bill is not meant to get students out of a quality physical education, but rather recognize that students are receiving that education from an extracurricular activity, extra coaching, extra training, that if the school board recognizes that program and can provide the adequate required resources, that the students then have a chance to spend that time in a more productive way for them. In closing, I have here several students, including Gracie Patchy, who will speak more to this high school level and show her dedication to you. Thank you.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Hi, my name is Gracie Patchy, and I am Miss California High School Rodeo 2015-2016. My high school has always allowed students the opportunity to earn PE credit for high school rodeo. The benefit to me personally is many. I've been able to take academic courses during regularly scheduled PE sections, and in the afternoons I have been allowed to attend rodeo practice, much like football players can go and attend football practice. This has opened up more time for me to better myself while also practicing the sport I know and love. I also still had to take the required freshman PE class and also pass all of the physical fitness tests to be able to have the opportunity to take this class. I am also given excused absences when I travel with rodeo, which allows me to make up all the work that I miss with my teachers instead of being marked truant and then having to attend Saturday school. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see you have other witnesses who wish to state their position on the bill.
My name is Jace McClure. I'm from Campo, California, and on behalf of District 9, I support SB 138.
I'm Trevor Granleys. I'm from Lodi, California, and I'm from District 9, and I support SB 138.
My name is Sam Seifert. I'm from Campo, California, and I support this bill.
I'm Cameron Graham, and I'm from Middletown, California, and I support this bill.
I'm Riley Wolbrandt from St. Inez, California, and I support SB 138.
I'm Molly Sparrow from Clements, California, and I support this bill.
I'm Jessie Placati from Gwenda, California, and I support this bill.
I'm Lindsay Rydell from Middletown, California, and I support this bill.
I'm Tanner Patchy from Middletown, California, and I support this bill.
Thank you. You all did a wonderful job. Do we have any opposition to the bill? If they could come forward.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members. I'm Dr. Greg Payne, a professor of kinesiology at San Jose State, a former department chair and a former associate dean administering several health-related departments.
Can we ensure his mic is on?
I'm sorry.
It is?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Do we start again?
Sure.
San Jose State professor, kinesiology, former department chair there, and also a former associate dean is administering several health-related departments at San Jose State, like nursing, nutrition. I was also a member of the state superintendent's task force on childhood obesity, cardiovascular disease, and type 2 diabetes. Our major conclusion was to enhance student achievement towards California's physical education standards. A key sub-recommendation was, quote, with few exceptions, like medical hardships, not granting exemptions to the current physical education requirements to any school or class, unquote. I was also a co-author of the National Physical Education Standards for kindergarten through 12th grade. A goal is to develop physically literate individuals with knowledge, skills, and confidence to enjoy a lifetime of physical activity, emphasizing the importance of lifelong active participation and the cognitive academic components of a quality program. Key sub-goals include, in those standards, developing competency in a variety of motor skills, not just one or two, and applying knowledge of concepts and principles related to movement and performance, again stressing the importance of those academic and cognitive components. Our Center for Disease Control strongly recommends daily physical education at all levels with, quote, planned and sequential curriculum and instructional practices consistent with state and national standards, unquote. Obviously, this requires certified, well-educated instructors specialized in physical education. Healthy People 2020 and the Institute of Medicine recommend making physical education a national focal point for obesity prevention, where all students at all levels should participate. This is just a small sampling of research-based information supporting broad-based physical education for all. So please oppose Senate Bill 138. It turns back the clock on the great work we've done in California, undermines virtually all expert recommendations, and would open the floodgate for an array of exemption requests while jeopardizing the overall health of most children in California. Be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you. Next witness.
Good afternoon. Mr. Chair and members, my name is Dr. Joni Verteber, and I am a Director of School Health and Physical Education Programs in Los Angeles County. I appreciate this opportunity to provide reasons and rationale for opposition to SB 138. And I would like to commend the committee analysis for a comprehensive review. Physical education is the only subject area that has exemptions in our ed codes. These exemptions are situation specific. An exemption means no credit for that activity. This legislation proposes an activity-specific exemption, rodeo, and is not needed due to existing education codes and regulations. Local education agencies have the authority to identify physical education content for their courses. They can give physical education credit for sports using a variety of options. These include physical education courses, independent study, and school-sponsored sports. Rodeo is not a school-sponsored interscholastic sport. Rodeo is a regional program sponsored by a rodeo association. Their participants are not any different than thousands of physically fit athletes from other sport associations who practice, work hard, compete, enjoy their sports, get good grades, even though they're not on a school-sponsored team. Some of these are pony colt baseball, club sports such as swimming and gymnastics, and karate, to name just a few. These athletes are not exempted from physical education. They do not get physical education credit unless they are enrolled in a district independent study program, which is an extension of the district core curriculum for that area.
Thank you. If you could summarize.
This legislation would create an entirely new exemption category. It is unnecessary and circumvents local control. It is detrimental to quality standards-based education. I respectfully request the committee vote no on SB 138, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
I just want to clarify one thing you said. You said that rodeo is not school-sponsored. Actually, in many schools, it is school-sponsored.
School-sponsored interscholastic.
Right, school-sponsored. Therefore, it would be allowable if it is under current law.
If it is school-sponsored.
Excuse me. It would be allowable under current law. if
Correct.
it is school-sponsored. So
If
we don't
it is.
dispute that. We don't dispute that. One more, quickly.
Monique Ramos on behalf of State Superintendent of Public Instruction. Unfortunately, here in opposition, the superintendent does apologize for his late opposition on this bill. The superintendent believes that this actually removes local control from local governing boards who are currently able to make this decision on their own. Additionally, he believes this confuses physical activity with physical education. This bill does not require that a teacher oversee the program, and it does not require that the PE state standards be taught to these students. These standards include key elements like things along the such as lifelong health skills, which are such important skills for students to learn. So, unfortunately, we have to ask for your no vote.
Thank you. Any others in opposition?
Kaylee Winston-Corin on behalf of the American Heart American Stroke Association in opposition to this bill.
Good afternoon. Kathy Lynch representing the California Association for Health, Physical Education, Recreation, and Dance in opposition.
Isabel Garcia on behalf of the California Teachers Association. For all the reasons stated, we're in strong opposition to the bill.
Thank you. Seeing no further opposition, we'll bring it behind the committee. First of all, I want to acknowledge the senator for being a true advocate for children in her professional life and certainly in her political life as well. What was it, 17 years as a superintendent, I believe? So I want to certainly thank you for that and acknowledge that. And I think, I think we share some things. Rodeo is pretty cool, right? I think it is. I tried it out there in Ag Days, right? They gave me the robe. I think Miss Rodeo was out there and had me, and I was left-handed, so it was kind of different. But I think we differ on the need for this bill. Where I sit today, I don't see a need for this bill because current law allows for rodeo to take place as long as it's school-sponsored. So I just don't see a way around that. It has to be school-sponsored because I think what you're saying, in essence, is that third parties could conduct PE. When we don't know, by whom we don't know. Would these people be trained? Would they be life scanned? Would they have background checks, et cetera? Those are all questions when you bring in third parties or third-party PE that would arise. So again, where I am today is current law allows for it. There's those quality controls that we need. We can't just send a student home and say, hey, have your PE time doing such and such a sport by who we don't know. So today I cannot support your bill because of those things. And again, schools across California do have rodeo today because they sponsor that activity. So that's where I sit today. And I didn't know if any of the committee members also wanted to comment or not. Mr. McCarty does.
Sure. Just I also concur. First of all, I just want to say that I get what you're thinking about is that young people do physical activities, many outside of the physical school setting, and trying to quantify what that means. Just in general, I think, as you probably do too, we need more PE in our classrooms. You look at the obesity epidemic, and whether it's rodeo or any type of activity, we need more people being active. Get fit is a real thing. One of the issues that came up by another person speaking, then I'm going to ask you a question, is the slippery slope. I think if you start here, where do you end? There's dance activities, there's American Legion baseball and so forth. It's just there's so many things that you could focus on how this would work. But I guess my question to you is why does the current process work for these rodeo programs around the state to work with the schools and the CIF to have an opportunity to kind of sync and coordinate? Maybe you can help me understand what we're lacking here.
Because the definition for interscholastic after-school program has come to mean so many things to so many people. It's a bit vague these days, and some school districts aren't aware of their opportunity. This in no way requires them to do so.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Chavez, then Ms. Kim.
To the, I'm sorry, sir, I don't remember to catch your name. Dr.
Greg Payne.
Greg Payne?
Payne.
It's Dr. Payne. You went on talking about the value of physical education as far as a lifetime change, culture of being an athlete. Talk about not being obese. Are all those things something that we are striving to in the healthcare and physical education program?
Is it on? Is it on? Sorry. Absolutely. I think everybody knows about the physical activity emphases in the physical education program. The things that are de-emphasized shouldn't necessarily be, but publicly are the academic cognitive components in a good physical education program. And then teaching the sort of values or appreciation of physical activity and movement across a lifetime. In other words, one of the greatest things I think we could do for any child is give them the physiological underpinnings to understand how they would create their own physical activity program. Because for any of us, that's going to change across time. We're continually redoing our programs. I want kids to be able to do that now and when they're 20 and 40 and 60 years old. And let's not confuse rodeo or football or athletics or any sports with physical education or even physical activity. There's so much more to a quality physical education program.
And so values and cognitive development to understand physical activity throughout your life. So
yes, sir.
For you to go forward. I agree with you. You know, I was very active in high school and as a wrestler. My knees are all busted, so right now I can't tie my shoes. And it's hurt my golf game. But Madam, I'm noticing on your cowboy hat you have a something on top. What is that?
So this is the Miss California crown, and so I'm crowned with the Miss California High School Rodeo crown, and then there's two other ladies in the audience, and they also have on their district crowns, because we not only are the state, but then we are also represented by districts. So although they represent their districts, I represent the entire state of California.
So what is you have any family members, or what's it like in your neighborhood, your family, aunts, uncles, anybody else ever reach that level or recognize it?
I'm the first one from my county to have won this title in 15 years, the first person from my district. And no one in my family has reached the level that I have. However, my sister competed in rodeo, and my brother's competing in the junior high rodeo, too.
And what about your uncles and aunts? Did they compete when they were in rodeo? And
they rode, but they didn't do rodeo. It wasn't as well known back then, of course, but my mom didn't, but my dad and brothers both rode.
Mm-hmm. This is where I'm kind of going with this, is that I firmly believe that we need more value statements on exercise, because we look at diabetes, one of the largest impacts upon our society. And so as people grow up in their communities, certain people don't have that issue. When I was in Chile, one of the things that was marked is that look at everybody, they're very in shape, because Chile's, it's a mountainous country. You're either going up or you're going down, and everybody's in shape, and they walk everywhere. And so you didn't see the obesity that you see around here. And it would I have to note that looking at every young person up here with the cowboy hat, none of them are obese. They all look pretty in good shape. And so they're doing something, which I would challenge all of us. If we go look at our schools, we'd probably see some children that probably could hit the gym once in a while, and they're probably in some exercise program. Also, I think in the culture, what you're talking about, you talk about America. I mean, if you were to go to Europe or Asia and you were to say, what would be the definitive culture of the United States, somewhere in there would be a cowboy hat and riding a horse. And so clearly it's part of our culture or who we are and recognizing the value of it. And I've ridden a horse before. I'm not nearly anything like you. But out in the Dakotas, I had the opportunity as a younger man to wrangle cattle. And it's hard. And there is a lot of cognitive physical development. And I was a very high qualified athlete wrestler at the time. So I think this actually speaks to another issue we're talking about. I notice the opposition is it's a lot of people employed within the school system. And so really this is not about people being healthy or children have an opportunity. This is about somebody concerned about, are we going to allow other activities like rodeo to meet a requirement, which they often have a passion for, or do we see this as more as a challenge that we can't allow somebody to think that a new program is going to take away their job? That's what this is about. It's not about health, and it's not about people falling passionate. It's about somebody's trying to control. And I think, we sit up here all the time. We had a couple of discussions earlier where we pretty much laid out the plan to what we want school districts to do. And it's interesting to me. Sometimes we do that real easy, and sometimes you run back and go, it's local control funding. We don't want to do that. So what time do we jump in and jump out? There's nothing more American than rodeo, and I'm going to be strongly supportive of this. I'd be surprised if not. This is the sort of thing that I think is going to be tweeted out or twittered out, or however they use that term. It's going to be out there because this is America, and we had to allow this to go forward, and I would move approval of this bill.
I'll second that, and I do have some comment I would like to make. Chair? Okay, great. Thank you, Senator Fuller, for bringing this bill forward. Gosh, I've raised 4 kids, and I've been with my children in every step of the way, and I've seen also the physical activities that they undertake. And also, just reading this bill, to me, it was a very common sense. I know providing physical education classes in each of our respective schools is a way for our school children to also meet that physical needs that we need in addition to just sitting in classrooms and learning the academic curriculum and so forth. But this is a good way to do it. But also I understand how vigorous the rodeo is. And I've been on horses myself, and I've taken classes, and there is no way I can be where you are at the level that you are competing. And so I understand how vigorous that physical education that you're doing. And you're doing this after school hours, and you're doing this in addition to your school courses. So I think there is a lot of the commitment that you are making here. What we're asking through this legislation is allow students who are participating in activities like these, extracurricular activities outside of school time, to be able to receive the PE requirement. And I think this is a reasonable request. And the way I read it, there is a section 51247 that says the governing board of a school district may exempt a 4-year or senior high school pupil from attending courses of physical education if the pupil is engaged in high school rodeo carried on wholly or partially after regular school hours. I think this is exactly what we're speaking to, and I understand the concerns that was raised by the superintendent's office, public education system, but because you're referring to the infringement upon local control. But this, the way I read it, does allow the local governing board members to make that determination. So to me, it's very supportable legislation, and I would be very happy to support it.
Great. Thank you. Just to clarify, though, a local school board now could allow this sport to be conducted. Current law allows for rodeo to take place through a high school. Ms. Ramos, could you just walk us through a couple things? What the superintendent's concerns? I believe they were along students not receiving all the PE standards because they would be in the off hours.
Correct. So I think, the superintendent's concern is that this is essentially confusing physical activity and physical education. So physical education has state standards. There are requirements attached to those courses. And as you have stated, this is currently allowable under current law. Our concern is that, the superintendent's concern is that by creating this exception, those students will not have access to those health standards, as well as it's not clear who will be overseeing the students. So we feel that the flexibility within current law covers all of these things and provides the flexibility to conduct rodeo if a school board decides to do so.
So in short, rodeo is physical activity.
Yes.
But rodeo might not always be physical education.
Correct.
Is that where you're going with this?
Correct.
Great. Thank you. And I again, the concerns are that next year we'll come back with something else, and students could be off at many places doing many types of activities that aren't school sponsored. And again, this is allowable if a school sponsors it, and schools in California do sponsor this activity now. With that, any other comments from the committee, Mr. Thurman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Fuller. First, I just want to acknowledge the young people who spoke here today. I'm very impressed with your presentation and your commitment to your sport. And To Miss California High School Rodeo, thank you for representing us in California and for your testimony. Senator Fuller, thank you. Superintendents, anybody who works for an elected official always has a special place in my heart. It's a job that I've always said I would never do again after one stint doing it. And anyone who worked for school board members, and I'm a former school board member, has a special place. I want to say this, though, right up front, that I didn't hear enough to compel me, just from what I've heard today, to say that this should get a yes vote. But I'm going to ask you a couple of questions because, what I try to do here in my short time here is I tell people where I'm leaning, but I want to always hear people. I want to hear what is it that makes you think that this should become, treated in a way that it exempts the participants from PE. And for starters, maybe you could just describe the activities, because I've been trying to think in my mind what basis you might offer for how it's comparable to PE in the first place. We had the debate that physical activity is different than physical education. So what about this would you say lends itself to physical education?
Well, my first thing is the school board is required to set a criteria, count the minutes, and figure out what it is that the students have to do. And as you heard from our testifying queen here, that she, in getting the exemption, that she went through and she did the physical fitness test and she did all of the criteria that was required. She just did it at a different time. And there was in at least one or two of the schools that we've talked to, there is an assigned teacher that checks that and is familiar with both rodeo and physical education teacher. So I think it's really not a case of substituting physical activity for a physical program. Right now, school districts can allow students to do this, but they must follow the ed code. They must satisfy the requirements for minutes of PE. They must satisfy the credentialed teacher overseeing them, and they must set up a criteria. And if the school district teachers, usually it's the PE teachers, work with the superintendent, as you well know, they would set up the cognitive program, and the students would be required to do it. The difference is they don't have to sit through a PE class at 2 o'clock every single day, or take a truant, or take an independent study if they have to compete on that day, or that's when the coaching is available. So basically for me, this is not in any way compromising the PE program. If the school district is able to decide that they want to offer this option, then they set up the criteria. No one else sets up the criteria. And number two, as to the slippery slope where there might be karate or whatever, first of all, there already is surfing in one school. As I started doing research, I was surprised. There is a number of things already going and allowed. The main difference between rodeo and that is that it's cheaper to give them a surfboard than it is to give them a horse and an arena and so on and so forth. So in that instance, I suppose that there could be more legislators come forward and decide that there's a variety of things they'd like to ask for to allow to be exempted on the list. But that's going to happen anyway. That happens whether I do this or don't do this, whether you would allow it or don't do it. You know, all of us, in 5 minutes, somebody will continue to do this. That's how we are in America. It's a good thing. And ultimately, you know, as long as the school district retains the control, because you and I have been there, and it's pretty hard if the school district doesn't, maintain the control. As long as they maintain the control to figure out how to meet the diverse new needs out there in the world for all our kids, the better off we are. The more flexible the system is, the better off we are. So if that helps with that question, I'll finish later, but...
Admittedly, I've not spent much time riding a horse or surfing, but it's not about me, right? I want to do what's best for our kids, their well-being, the comments made about health, wellness, obesity. But I would like to stick with an example that you just gave about why this is so important, so that someone who's participating in rodeo has the opportunity to not have to sit through the 2 p.m. class. And I just was thinking, wouldn't that exist already, though, if it's a day of competition? Wouldn't the students be excused anyway? But why would it require a regular excuse from PE? Meaning athletes of various sports will have something come up and they may need to travel to another school. And I'm sure they get excused from many classes for that day. But why would this require an ongoing waiver from PE
Most of the programs, the students that are in them now currently use one semester is about the amount of time that they need. This is more like Olympics training, which mostly they end up not even being in public school, as you well know. More time inclusive, and unfortunately can't be done on a computer. It has to be done, in a barn, in an arena, in those kinds of things. So,
but can it be done in just the period of PE? If PE is 45 minutes or something like that, if you get excused to do work for rodeo in 45 minutes,
what do? They can take an extra trigonometry class, and that's what they're hoping.
Well, let me clarify here. Surfing, okay, offered at this high school I went to, offered in
and you were the one that told me about it, actually. Thank you.
But it's offered at more than one. I can assure you of that in California. But it's school sponsored. And if it's a school-sponsored sport, the students are exempted from PE because that is their PE time. The difference here is it school-sponsored or is it some private individual out there conducting PE at 8 or 9 o'clock at night? Because it needs quality controls. It needs to be school-sponsored. That's the argument.
Here's my last question. I was a wrestler in high school. I wasn't good like Mr. Chavez. But I learned a lot from even from the difficulty of losing, being in a team sport, preparing, running 2 miles every day, calisthenics, push-ups, weights. I learned a great deal. Interestingly enough, my coach was my PE teacher. And so I'm sympathetic to the argument that if we're going to allow exemptions, that there should be some involvement from someone who is affiliated either with the school or somehow has been through whatever processes should be in place to ensure that the program fits within a design program. And I'm sure that there are fantastic people who are coaches of rodeo. I'm not calling into question anybody's character, but it makes sense to me that there would be the structural considerations for how PE happens. And so what say you to that to those who've made the argument that where this falls short is that there aren't PE instructors, folks who've had background checks, folks who've been through training to make sure that they're providing physical education as it relates to our Common Core standards in California?
Current law allows rodeo to be considered and used, but the school district must set up the criteria for physical education that students must complete in order to get the credit or the exemption. A credentialed teacher is required, and in the law currently, now how the role of the credentialed teacher is, whether they're out there teaching rodeo every day with a horse or whether they're logging more like an independent student teacher or student program, that's wide open, and that's what this local school board needs to provide for their students so that they are sure, and the PE faculty should be engaged. And very quickly, just a side note, for me, I had a very large school district, and in a large school district, kids of privilege and kids who had special talents often dropped out, left the system because there was no flexibility in it at all. I don't think that's good for us in public schools. I think that if we just opened our mind a little bit and provided a more flexible schedule, especially with computers and online education and all the things that are coming, that met specific individual students' needs, but left the control for the school board and the superintendent and the staff to basically come up with what needs to be done in addition to the flexibility that they are granting, I think that serves us all.
Thanks for walking through it with me and for taking my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You may close.
Thank you. So to go back and address a couple of arguments, first of all, I appreciate this thoughtful discussion. I appreciate the time. I know everybody's tired. But the bottom line is, if we want to improve schools, and believe me, I spent 32 years trying to improve schools from every position there was, except driving the bus. I'm not a good driver. If you want to do it, you have to engage the students today in what they want to be engaged in. You have to make our adult world engage their student world. And you have to find ways for adults to provide the guidance, but the flexibility. If we want our public schools to flourish, that's what we need to do. As a school superintendent, I worked very hard but fell short many times because you have to do what the Ed Code says. I mean, that's what it is, and that's what it is. But at the end of the day, there were many regrets I had about not being able to make things more flexible. So that's what I'm asking for today. It is not the Rodeo Association that would give the school district the criteria or the number of minutes and say, this is how much the students will participate. It is the school district that will say, if you want to earn the exemption, this is what you have to do. And they already have a contract with the association because the students are required to get that permission from the school before they would be able to go forward. If there is any school district that doesn't want to do it, they don't have to do it. They just say no. So the current program, for a minute, let me step aside and get on my
Please summarize.
my soapbox just for a minute. Yeah, or my horse, thank you. PE, the way it is now, is going to have to be overhauled. And I did teach PE for part of my career. The bottom line is people are getting more and more obese. Students are getting more and more obese. The program has not improved that necessarily, nor changed it. And by deviating, there's 274
Please summarize,
students.
Ms. Fuller.
Yes, thank you. 274 students in rodeo. By deviating for 274 students, we are not necessarily changing that piece. The last thing is that these students have come here today. I appreciate them trying to shape their future for tomorrow. I appreciate all of you for listening. Thank you. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
The motion is do pass. O'Donnell?
No.
O'Donnell, no. Chavez?
Aye.
Chavez, aye. Kim?
Aye.
Kim, aye. McCarty? No. McCarty, no. Santiago?
No.
Santiago, no. Thurman? No. Thurman, no. Weber?
Here's a bipartisan vote.
But I believe everyone here is for children. Thank you.
What do we got?
You want reconsideration?
2-4, the bill fails, Senator.
Could we have reconsideration on it?
I'm sorry. She needs.
May I ask for reconsideration?
Yes, you may.
Thank you.
Everybody.
We're done, huh?
This meeting is adjourned.